Scholar IT Solutions is a balanced staffing company developed by a group of professionals with an experience of over 18 plus years in staffing solutions. With years of quality and committed high-end application development and staffing experience, we have become experts at delivering the right fit, the first time. We will be glad to be your last stop and provide you with the perfect solution to your requirements. Follow Scholar IT Solutions LinkedIn page. For more updates, follow our social media pages.
Hi everybody, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Ankit. So I'm going to take you through this session. I hope you can see my screen. If anybody of you can confirm that.
Yes, we can see.
Great, thanks. As you can see, this webinar is organized by Scholar IT Solutions. Scholar IT is an IT solutions provider. It's a group of professionals and technical and domain expertise, and they are serving many clients in the entire USA. It is one of the finest companies in the US. Take some time out and do visit the links that are pasted in the GoToMeeting chat. You can always follow them on the LinkedIn, Facebook page to get more updates about their work. Okay, so this session is about Postgres, as a whole, the architecture. So this is how it goes. I'm gonna take you through the architecture of the Postgres, explain you in detail how it works. You can ask questions whenever you feel like. Feel free to ask anytime. Any minor, anything that you feel that you want explanation, I'm happy to do it. Okay. This is about me. My name is Ankit. I have around 11.5 years of IT experience. I have done some certifications. I am basically an Oracle consultant with some expertise in open source. So I have done in certification Golden Gate, Autonomous. You can always reach me out on the LinkedIn link that is there if you feel like. Okay. So Postgres, little bit of introduction about what Postgres actually is, how the name came from. So it is often called as PostgreSQL or Postgres. Postgre is wrong, so never mention it like Postgre. That is wrong word. It has to be Postgres or PostgreSQL. Okay, it's an RDBMS. So if some of you are from a database background, RDBMS nothing is relational database management system. There are two type of databases. One is RDBMS, other is non-RDBMS. So your document DB, your spatial DB, your MongoDB, those are non-RDBMS. Where your Postgres, your Oracle, they are RDBMS. So what do you mean by RDBMS is the data is stored in a form of a relation, a table. If I want to explain simple words, any data that is stored in form of a table which has rows and columns is called a relational database management system database. Okay, so Postgres is also built on the same lines. It is basically built to give you a little bit of comparison to Oracle and also to compete in the SMBs. When I say SMBs, smaller and medium business right now. Okay, so it can do mostly whatever Oracle can do. Postgres can also do. It can handle your complex queries. It has updatable views, metrized views. It supports functions and procedures. It can run on any platform that you want. It doesn't need a specific platform, and it can run on any operating system. So basically, there are no caveats. There are no limitations to install, run, and manage Postgres. But it has a USB. It is a free and open source software. So what do you mean by free and open source software? You don't pay license to anybody to use Postgres, database. Also, it is readily available with the source code, so you can use that source code and do your own tweaking in the source code and run as how you want. Okay, this is very important to understand what do you mean by free and what do you mean by open source. Right? Free, you don't pay license to anybody. again repeating, you don't pay license to anybody for downloading the software, for using it in your production environment. You don't pay license. Open source, the source code is readily available. You can also recommend changes to the community. I will explain what community is. If you feel like there are some add-ons or value adds that you can put to the current source code, and then they will go through it, and if your recommendations are good, they will add it and release a new version. So this is how open source world works. Okay, little bit of history. It goes back to 1982. Michael Stone Baker was the first one who started this. It was initially called as Ingress. Slowly, the name got changed to Post Ingress and then Postgres. Okay, so the first point for any new application or any new software to come in the market is you have to publish papers. Okay, so Postgres team published papers in 1986, and then the next step is you release a beta version for testing to a small set of users, right? So that they did in 1989. If you read through, in 1989, the version 1 was released to small set of users, and subsequently they released a lot of versions. The first open source available to the entire world, right, to everybody, was released on 1st August 1996. From there they have released a lot of versions, and the current version, the latest version, was 14.2. It was released 2 months back. So how the versions get released, or who releases it, if it's an open source, and who manages it? So if you see in the second last line, a group of developers and volunteers, right, around the world, they maintain the software and they do these releases. You can also be a part of the global development group if you want. You just need to reach out to them, show your work, show your expertise, and they will definitely you will be inducted in the group if you want. Okay, so this is the community that maintains this Postgres. They are responsible, or they voluntarily, get the new versions out, increase, uh, uh, add the value adds that are recommended, or the flaws that are found out by somebody, fix them and get it out. Okay, that's how the open source community works. 12, 13 was where major success. Now 14 is currently running. Okay. Before I move forward, any questions? Okay. Moving on to the architecture. So this is how the architecture of Postgres looks like. It is very similar to Oracle. So if you know Oracle database, if you have learned, or if you have worked on Oracle architecture, it is very similar to that. It is based on those lines only. So you would be easily able to understand. If you have not, then also it's pretty easy. So if you see here, there are three things here. One is this part, the other is this part, and the third is this part. Okay. So this is your memory part, where you where it will use that memory from. This is your background processes, and these are your data files. So I will explain each one by one. Postmaster. This is something that is very important to understand. Postmaster is a process in Postgres. If I want to give an analogy to Oracle, how your listener is in Oracle, right? Your Postmaster is in your Postgres. So Postmaster is responsible to listen the outside connections. It is responsible to make sure you get connected to the database. If you are a valid user, you will go through the Postmaster, and Postmaster will allow the connection to happen to the database. If you are not, then you cannot connect. So that's why the name has been given as Postmaster. It will take your query, post it to the database, and then the connection will get established. So if your Postmaster is not running, you cannot reach to the database. So always remember, Postmaster is a very important process. If you don't manage it well, if you kill the Postmaster, there is no way an external connection can go to the database. Okay. It doesn't do any other thing, but it is like a middle section of your connection to your database. Okay, so you need to make sure a Postmaster is always up and running. Okay, then your memory, your shared buffers, it is analogous to your Oracle database buffer, correct? So any query that you run, any insert, update, delete command that you run, the data is fetched from the data files, and first it is moved to your shared buffers. because if somebody else runs the same command, instead of going till the data files, the same data is available in the shared buffers. So the data, the query will come out faster. So that is the use of shared buffers. It's the same concept in Postgres, so the same in Oracle, where you have a shared buffer. Any query that you run is logged into the shared buffer. The result of the query is logged in the shared buffer for faster processing if the same query is run again. So it's a first in first out. If the shared buffers are full, it is completely flushed. If you do an update or something, it first resides in the shared buffers. Once the buffers are full, it is flushed to your data files. Okay. Then your wall buffers. Wall buffers is similar to your redo log buffer in your Oracle. So the meaning of wall is write ahead log. The full form is write ahead log. So what do you mean by wall is any changes that you make, the metadata about that changes are written in wall buffers. So they are needed or responsible for any kind of issues that you get. So if you want to get your database in the position how it was before the issue, then you need walls. How you need redo logs, right? The same way you need wall buffers. So the changes, the metadata about the changes, for example, you did an update, right? You did an insert, you created a new table, whatever you did, the changes about that is written in the wall buffers, and subsequently that wall buffers are flushed to your wall segments. Okay. uh, After your data is there in your wall segment, then only your database can be it can be moved to the position where it was before the crash. That is why wall segments are very, very important segments, and wall buffers are managed internally by Postgres. So if you know, as I said again, if you know Oracle, it is similar to your redo log buffer, and you redo logs as your wall segments. Process array is that part of the memory which is used for your query processing. So whenever you run a query, right, the query will be checked first. So for example, if I run select star from employee, right, so the query semantics and syntax check will happen whether I have given it correctly or not. For example, select star from, I give a spelling of from wrong, so I get an error that okay, the syntax is not correct. So that check happens under the process array memory structure, right? And then if you've given select star from employee, but there is no employee table in the database, right? So that is your semantics check, where it will check whether you have given the correct object name or not. If not, it will again give you an error. Okay, this object does not exist. So it uses the process array memory structure for that. Your syntax check, your semantics check, your parsing of the query, the parse tree will get created. Those all things will happen under process array. So that is again internal to Postgres. You don't do anything in that case. It is allocated once you install it, and based on what how much memory you have given, it will get accumulated there. Then you have background processes. So how does the shared buffers will get flushed in your data files? So the reason or how it happens is through the background process. So if you see this BG writer, your BG writer is responsible to write data from your shared buffers to your data files. Okay, so background writer full form is, so it will write data from your shared buffers to data files. Your wall writer, this process will write data from your wall buffers to wall segments. Okay, your log writer will write data in your error log files. So how you have in Oracle, how you have alert log, right? In the same way, your Postgres has error log files. So you need a process to write it, right, in those files. So your wall writer does your log writer does that. So your log writer will write data into your error log files. So if anybody can you tell me which process writes data in your alert log in Oracle? Does anybody of you know that? Anyone? Any guesses?
It's a DB writer.
Okay. Thanks, Rahul. Anybody else? Okay. So thanks, Rahul. But yeah, it's not only DB writer. All the processes write in alert log in Oracle. Okay, your SMON, PMON, DB writer log. Everybody writes in alert log. They all have the permissions. They will write their individual logs in the alert log. Okay, here in Postgres, log writer is the process that is been assigned to write the logs in your error log files. Then you have archiver. It is same your how you have archive process in your Oracle, where your wall segments will be archived. If your database is in archive log in Postgres, your data from wall segments will be moved to archived wall by archiver process. Okay, by default your database is not in archive mode. That's a standard practice. But yeah, if you move it to an archive mode, then your archive process will come in and it will write the data from your wall segments to archive mode. So BG writer is done, wall writer is done, log writer is done, archiver is done. Then you have stats collector. So stats collector is basically nothing but it will collect stats. So it is a process that will run continuously. It will collect stats on the tables that you have in database. Based on that only, the performance is the Postgres database performance is measured. So what happens is, for example, if you have a lot of DMLs on one table, right, that stats gets collected and then it shows up in your stats collection tables, where it will say, okay, this much of fragmentation is there in this table. Please, you have to take action. So how do you find out whether your table is fragmented or not? Okay, so what is fragmentation? Again, fragmentation is nothing but if you have a lot of DMLs on the table, uh, if you do a delete on a table, right? So what happens if you do an insert on a table in Postgres? What happens is, Postgres is a delete insert database. So if you do an update, it will first delete the original row and insert a new row. That's what happens in Postgres. If I update a already available row, it will delete the existing row and insert a new row. So what happens is, whichever row it's get deleted, right, that space remains there as it is. So that is where your fragmentation will come into picture. So if you have lot of updates happening, there will be a lot of fragmentation
Yeah,
on that table.
Bala here. Can I correct? Actually, Postgres won't delete immediately. It will mark it as deleted so that
Correct.
it will continue.
It
Sorry
will.
to
It
interrupt.
will. That's right. I mean, it will not delete the space. It will mark as delete, but at the end of the day, that will result into fragmentation. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to explain. So how fragmentation will come into picture. So that will result in your performance degradation, because your indexes doesn't know there is no data there, because it from the outside it still shows up, okay, there is a row there even though there is nothing. So you need to make sure that you do defragment your database, your tables periodically to get good performance in Postgres. Okay, so how I will be able to know whether a table is fragmented or not, or what is happening on a table? So there will be stats that will be collected for each tables, and that will be done by stats collector. Okay, and your defragmentation. How do you do defragmentation? That will happen with another process that is called auto vacuum. So this process was brought in Postgres because of this issue only, where there was a lot of fragmentation, a lot of performance degradation. They wanted something to work on the table so that the fragmentation can be reduced. So if I have a table that has a lot of fragmentation, I will run vacuum on it and it will remove the fragmentation. But again, vacuum is something that you need to study properly, then only implement in your systems, because it has performance implications. Because there are two type of vacuums also. Standard vacuum is there and full vacuum is there. Okay, so if you do full vacuum, if I give an example, if you do a full vacuum on a table, the table gets logged, right? So when the vacuuming is happening, nobody can access the table. Even the select will not work on the table. So you need to be very, very thorough with your architecture design. When do you want to do full vacuum? When you want to do vacuum on the table? Okay, so that again depends upon what kind of system is there, what kind of SLAs you have in your environment, and then you can put that. So auto vacuum is a process that is not available in Oracle, and it's an addition process in Postgres, but other processes are already there in Oracle. Check pointer again, the same how you have CKPT in Oracle, the same is your check pointer here. which will be responsible for doing the check files. Okay, files, extend all data files, wall segments, archive wall, error log files. So any questions anybody has till now? Okay, great.
Like stats collector is nothing but memory monitor in Oracle, or it's different?
I won't say it is exactly the same. So you have DBMS packages, right, in Oracle, where you have DBMS packages that will run in the background and it will collect stats, right? So memory monitor is a part of it. It doesn't collect all the stats. It will only collect stats for a memory, right? But here the stats collector will collect stats about how much of your table is being used. When I say used, your DMLs, your tuples, those everything will be collected by stats collector. So you don't have to worry about this process. It is by default when you install it, it will run in the background. You don't have to run it manually. So it will keep running and the stats will get collected automatically. But you should know which table exactly to refer to. If you want to find out if there are any issues on the table. Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, Ankit, if you kill that postmaster, right, what will, is there any impact to database availability?
Yes. So if you kill the postmaster, you cannot connect to the database.
DB will be crashed.
Means
DB
existing
will not be crashed. DB will not be crashed. Your DB will be up. Your file systems will be available. You can't connect to the database.
Okay.
Okay. It's like I have a place to go, but I don't have the road to go to the place.
Okay. What about the existing connections? If there is an impact for the existing connection, it's already established the
No,
connection.
in fact, there is no impact for the existing connections.
So
It's like
Because Postmaster is responsible to connect to the database. If you are already having a connection to the database, that doesn't get impacted. Another thing is, if you kill the postmaster, it will automatically sprawl itself. Okay, so for example, if I kill the postmaster, another postmaster will come in then and there in seconds. So you don't have to worry about that also in Postgres. Okay, so it's not like you killed it and you have to manually bring it up. No, it's not like that. Hello, getting my point?
thank you, getting.
Okay. Okay.
In a maintenance purpose, how would you? Sorry, when you're doing any maintenance, how would you restrict the users to not connect to the database other than doing any database commands? Like in Oracle, you have the privilege of not having the listener up and running, so clients cannot connect. How would you mimic this in Postgres?
You can always do a user level restriction. So if you are doing a maintenance where you don't want an external connection to come in, right? You can always do a user level restrictions.
Yeah, but you wouldn't know which user. Like I would in Oracle, I could put the DB in a restricted mode to prevent any users other than the OS authenticated. But would you be? I mean, that is the only way. The listener takes away that privilege, right?
So you can always put DB in read-only mode in Postgres also.
Can't we stop Postmaster and can do the things?
You can stop Postmaster. There is a way to do it. You need to run a script which will not allow the spawning to happen. Okay, but that is very high level. If you don't find anything, that only you do. So I would generally suggest that don't don't do any kind of research on Postmaster. There are other ways to do these things in Postgres, because in Postgres user administration is very different than in Oracle. So in Postgres, what happens is once you create a user, it gets access to all the databases by default. Okay, in Oracle, it is very different. So that is why there are ways that you can restrict access at the user level and at the database level. That is very easy in Postgres. You don't have to touch Postmaster.
Which method is best one to have?
So if I have 10 databases in a cluster, okay, so what I'll do is I will take you through that, then you understand maybe what is a cluster, and then I will come back to this question. Okay, so I think then it will be very clear.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions on the architecture?
Means it's like similar like a SQL server. We can put the database in restricted mode, how we will do in Oracle, right? And we can do activity
Yes,
and
yes.
we can make it.
You can do that. Okay, great. Moving on. See, again, yeah.
A key
Anybody?
question is, like, is there any difference between that alert log in Oracle and here error log? I mean, same kind, or is there any difference? Like, we can find any difference in the error log files?
See, alert log has so one difference I can tell is alert log will have more detailed information about the error, but in error log you won't have that kind of detailing. Okay, so the analogies is it's the most important alert log that you have in Postgres, but you won't have that detailing what you have in alert log. You have your aura errors and all those things that will point you to the solution, but here it's very limited. You don't get that kind of lengthy explanation about what exactly is the issue.
So this is the only way to check the information. Is there any other ways, to get
No.
it?
So in Postgres, what happens is any error that you get on screen, right? Those are very self-explanatory. So, for example, you are not able to connect to the database, or your table is not getting created, or something, anything is happening. You get an error at the screen only that is very self-explanatory. So you don't have to go and check in the error log. Okay, I have never visited error log from last 2-3 years. I never, because whatever, if you know the architecture, if you know that you are doing something right, whatever error you're getting, that only you will understand what exactly the issue is. You don't have to go to the error log to find the error. See, Oracle, what happens is there are errors that we don't understand, right? For example, I am getting an errors like snapshot too old or something like that, right? Inbound connection timeout or some, those errors we don't understand what exactly is happening. Then you go to alert log and check for more details. In Postgres, it is not like that. Whenever you get an error, you will understand from the error itself what exactly the issue is. Okay.
So the auto vacuum also it run automatically, or we need to schedule that?
Yes.
The fragmented.
So, you have options. So auto vacuum, you can schedule it. So for example, you are working into an environment where you have 5 days, your production is running in 2 days, weekend it is not running, right? So you can schedule your vacuuming on the weekend, so that you are at par with the performance where you are removing the fragmentation and there is no business impact also. But if you are working in a production environment where 24/7 your system has to be up everything, then you need to find the window out, right? Maybe in a night 4 hours you need to run, or something like that you need to run. You need to vacuum it every day, so that you don't have to vacuum it for the week and the weekend, right? So those things you can do. So auto vacuum is schedulable. Whenever you want, you can schedule it. You can manually also run the vacuums. So it's simple command, vacuum and table name. That's it. Just run that, whenever you want, and it will start the vacuuming of the table.
Okay.
Okay. Great. Anybody else? Any questions?
Do you have an equivalent of a control file in Postgres?
Yes, there is a configuration file in Postgres, PostgreSQL.conf. Okay, so based on that, your database will run. So that gets created when you install it. It will have all the default values. But yeah, if you want to make changes, you need to make changes in that configuration file.
So
that's
same
more
like
like a SP file
It's
or
like a
any,
SP file and T file, right?
yeah, not like control file, correct?
No. There are no such things in Postgres. Only
Okay.
PostgreSQL.conf is the file that will be handling it.
so it can be dynamically changed, like we have P file, SP file option, or
Yes, there are some parameters that needs a reboot. How we have in Oracle, right? Same is the case in Postgres. So
Similar like
there are
MySQL.
Yes, similar to MySQL. All RDBMS are on the same lines. So, for example, if I want to dynamically allocate wall memory, I can do it. I don't need a reboot, right? If I want to change my database from an non-archive, I need a reboot. Okay. When I say reboot, you're bounds of the database. So those concepts are similar.
Actually, Postgres is a mixture of SQL Server, MySQL, and Oracle.
Yeah, I would not say that it has its own identity, but yes, it has taken all good things from the RDBMS.
Yeah, it has its own identity, but it's started with all good parts of each and every RDBMS.
Right. Okay. Shall we move forward? Anybody else has any questions?
You can go forward.
Okay. See, this is again the process architecture. Just quickly again, whenever a client, so for example, you are using your laptop and you are connecting to a database. Okay, the first connection will always happen with your Postmaster, and your Postmaster will only spawn your background processes, right? You don't have to worry much about this. It's internal, but you should know that once you go through the Postmaster, then only you are allocated the shared memory. So, for example, if I talk about Oracle, you have your PGA, right? Every connection has its own PGA. The same way, every client connection Postgres will be allocated a little bit of shared memory to work through. But that will only happen once you have gone through the Postmaster. There is something called as database cluster. It is very different what you call cluster in Oracle. Cluster in Oracle is different. Database cluster is different. Here, database cluster is nothing but group of databases. I can create more than one database in a single installation, and those number of databases that I create, that they will be called as database cluster. Okay, so if I am creating a new user, by default that user will get access to all the database inside my cluster. That is one thing that I don't like about Postgres, but this is how it is. If I create a new user, by default my user can connect to all the databases.
So that the reason for that, like a user and schema is different in the Postgres, right?
Yes, you're right. User is a different thing. Schema is a different thing.
User is only using for the connection, connecting the Postgres cluster, right?
You can always use the that user to create an object in public schema. Okay, so that is why you get access, because you have a public role assigned to the user whenever you create a new user. Okay, so if you go to more internals in Postgres, if I ask a question, how if I create a user, it has access to all the databases, because in Oracle you need to grant connected resource, right, to a new user. But in Postgres, it is not like that. The answer to that question is, whenever you create a new user, it is by default assigned a public role, and that public role has access to all the databases. That is why your user can connect to the databases. And when you create for example, I create a new user, I connect it to a database and I create a table, it will allow me, because there is a public schema available inside each database. Okay. So yes,
got it.
What you said is right. User is different, schema is different, and roles are also different. So these are three things that are different from what Oracle offers, but it is different in Postgres.
But even though if it is default assigned public role, can you later modify it, or that's the nature of? Okay.
You can do it. So you can revoke the public role. You can do that. So that's how it runs in the production environments right now, right? We don't want a user to get access to all the databases. That is not correct, because in this cluster I might have 4 application databases, 4 infra databases, 2 non-prod databases, 2 prod databases. So if I create a non-prod user, I don't want the non-prod user to have access to prod database, right? But yes, that you have to do it manually after you create the user.
To what level can you extend that control? I mean, to the table level, or only to the database level, or even to the row level?
You can do it at the database level. So once you can also do it at the table level also. You can also do that.
Okay.
That is possible.
Yep.
Okay. So this is again a little summary. If you later refer to the PPT, you can always go through this. I have written it here for your information. PG stat activity. These are the tables that you need to look at for the stats. So in future, if you look at PG stat activity table, that is a table inside Postgres, you will find out information about the actual stats of the table. Okay. Again, Postmaster as a listener, as I explained, any new client connection that goes to your Postmaster first. The important point to note is it will listen on only one and only one TCP port. So for Oracle, the port number is 1521. That's a default port. Sorry. For Postgres, the default port is 5432. So if you are installing a new, install a new flash box, by default it will run on 5432. You should need to make sure the 5432 is open for connections, right? If you install another version of Postgres, then you need to define a new port number because 5432 is already used. Okay, so it listens on one and only one TCP.
I mean, you mean like the different versions, like if you have on the same cluster 11.2.4 and other is a 12c kind of thing.
So if I have a box of Linux, right? If I install Postgres 13, so it will use 5432. And if I on the same box, if I install Postgres 14 on a different system, right? I cannot use 5432. I need to use 5433, 5434, something else, right? So
Okay.
that's how you need to make sure that you give a different port.
Any range, specific range for as for Oracle?
No range, no specific range. Any port you can. Right. You need to make sure that it's open. That's it.
But you don't have a control to stop and start something like that as listener, right? In Oracle.
You Oracle or Postgres?
Postgres, Postmaster.
You have. So if you have two installations, you will have two Postmasters running.
So why he's saying now we don't have grip on we have many databases in the cluster, so many connections will happening to the particular cluster, right? So that's
Correct.
why you will have issues with the other applications. That's why instead of that he's saying no. What I meant to say, if you stop the Postmaster, it will stop the connections to the other databases in the cluster, right?
Correct.
So avoid that.
Postmaster,
we have to do database level.
What I'm trying to say is there is nothing that nothing will work if your Postmaster is missing. First point is that. Okay, so you need to make sure Postmaster is always running. Second point is when you install two versions, two different installations on the same box, you have two different Postmasters running because they are running on different ports, right? So those are two different installations. They will never get mixed up. So if your Postmaster is always available, you don't have to worry about how your connection is happening. So I did not understand your question, or you can rephrase it and ask. But there is no problem. You can have n number of versions installed. In one installation, you can have n number of databases created. Okay, it is not like in Oracle where your one instance can have one database. No. If I have one installation, I can have 10 databases inside it.
No, like SQL Server.
Yes. So your SQL, you have DBO, right? DBO is your default. Then you can create a lot of databases. The same you can do in Postgres. I have a Postgres database that will come as a default database. Then I can create n number of databases in one instance only, one installation only. I don't have to install again and again.
Yeah, you have answered all this question, but I want to more. When you want to restrict that listener, I mean, I don't want users to connect to that particular instance or database. So can we able to do that? I mean, you were saying you can do the user level, but if you have one instance, you have 1,000 users, we have to do for all users. How we gonna work on that?
So why would you restrict for all users? So that is again,
I mean, any kind of you want to do, you want to do.
You can always put your database on read only. Okay, where the user cannot do anything. You can always put the database on restricted mode. That is also possible. Okay. See, understand. You won't have 1,000 users first of all. That is not good administration. Okay. You will have a pool of application users. You will have a pool of infra users. You will have a pool of monitoring users. Okay. So you segregate them in groups and then you decide which user gets access to what database. Okay. So that is how you do basically. Okay. Any other questions here? Okay. So this is your query processing. I just wanted to touch upon that also. This is where your process array comes into picture. Whenever you run a query, right, as I explained, select star for employee. So your parser will generate a parse tree from the SQL statement that you have given. Then your analyzer will do a syntax and semantics check, as I explained, whether you have given the syntax correct or not, whether you have used the correct object or not. Then your rewriter will come into picture, then your planner, and the last your executor. So these are the 5 steps that will happen whenever you fire a query to the database. These are very similar to your Oracle as well. Okay. So what happens is once your parse tree is generated, and if you are running the same query again, the parse tree will not get generated again. That is the reason why your query comes faster the second time, because it already has the parse query and you use that. Okay, this is just for your information. These questions might come in your interviews if you go. When what happens, when you fire a query, how the parse tree gets generated, you can refer to this.
It is same as Oracle, like
same
execution plan, cost based of same.
Yes.
There's no difference.
No, not much difference. It's exactly built on the same lines. Okay, so this is again just a view about how it works. So again, this is where I've given a little bit of comparison where listener is equal to your postmaster. Your LGWR in your Oracle is your wall writer. Your DBWR is your background writer. Your CKPT is check pointer. And only there is no such process for auto vacuuming in Oracle, because Oracle doesn't need that. Okay, Oracle is not a delete insert. Oracle is a normal simple normal flow. How it happens in Oracle, so it doesn't need any kind of auto vacuuming. It needs analyzing. So you need to analyze your tables and indexes frequently in Oracle as well. Okay, so you in the same line you need to vacuum your tables in Postgres. Okay, so now what is a database cluster? Touching upon that as well, as I said, it's a collection of database. It's not a rack or something. Don't get it there. You don't need those things in Postgres. Postgres doesn't support rack. First point. So cluster, it's just a collection of databases. Each cluster has a separate data directory. So every installation will have a file system, different file system. Okay. So for example, you have opt Postgres. So on that you install Postgres 13. You have opt Postgres 1. There you can install Postgres 14, like that. So your each installation will have a data directory, different data directory. It will have a different port, right? 5432, 5433, and your processes, set of processes. A cluster can contain multiple databases. So this is how it looks like. Okay, so you have a database cluster where you have n number of databases, and each database has its own objects. That's the same how you have in Oracle. Every database has tables, objects, indexes, and those things. That is there in the database. But yeah, cluster is what? It's a group of databases in Postgres. Okay. Any questions on this till now?
Can you go
No
back to the
questions?
previous slide where you're talking about ports?
This one?
Can you help me explain about the TCP port? Does it mean that when you say different databases, Can you explain that for one more time?
Sure. So see, I have a cluster, right? I will explain this. This is a cluster. This is one installation. Consider this as one installation of Postgres. So this complete cluster is accessible on 5432. That's a TCP port. If I decide to create another cluster here, another installation, that complete cluster, which can have n number of different other databases, would be running on 5433. Okay, that is why it says every cluster has its own TCP port. Yeah.
Yeah, clear. How do you differentiate between the cluster? Let's say I've got a machine where I'm installing 3-4 databases. So logically,
you cannot install 3-4 databases in Postgres. First point. Okay. You install Postgres as a software. Inside that, you create 3-4 databases.
Right. That's correct. That's what I meant. Okay. I'm sorry about that. So in that case, how do we differentiate is that called a cluster by default?
Yes. So that group of 3-4 databases is called a database cluster. That's it.
Oh, okay. Thanks. That helps.
So when you install that, you need to give like these 5 databases a cluster when you install the first time?
No. So see, I can keep creating n number of databases. Nobody tells me to call them a cluster. This is for understanding of how it works.
Okay.
You don't want to call it a cluster. You don't call a cluster. It's like number of databases inside one installation, right? They are represented as database cluster. That's it.
So the port number is based on the entire installation, not on each database, right?
Yes, exactly. When you install Postgres for the first time, you assign a port. Okay. After that, you can create n number of databases inside that installation. Nobody cares about the port.
Can you also control the databases through different ports?
No.
Okay, so it is only one port. Okay, then can you also give multiple ports for the installation?
No, that's why it says one TCP port.
Okay, gotcha.
That's why it says here, if you say listens on one and only one TCP port.
Yeah.
Okay. That's how it is with Oracle also, right? 1521, you can't give multiple ports.
No, you can, right? In Oracle, you can assign multiple
That is for
ports.
different instance, right? For one instance, you cannot give more than one port.
Your listener can have multiple ports. You can give. In Oracle, you can do that.
Okay.
That's a listener, I suppose. For listener, you can create. For listener, you can different ports.
You can create multiple listeners, you can create multiple ports, and you can create multiple ports for each of the multiple listeners. It's too flexible. I understand there's a confusion. They kind of simplified it in Postgres, but with simplification comes, flexibility at question, right? So that's fine.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, great. So, yeah, so this is where we were, and this is again a little bit of physical structure of your database. So you will have your base data, your PG data under which your installation will happen, right? And then you can have your multiple. These are databases. Okay, so your sample DB, test DB, Postgres, these are all databases that will all reside under your data directory. Your data directory will have a PostgreSQL.conf file. So that is your all the databases. You have one file. It does not separate for all databases. One file will manage all these databases, right? And then you have these table spaces also that are common for your all databases. So you have only 2 table spaces in Postgres: PG default and PG global. So that is common for all the databases.
Temp0, Temp1 database.
These are template databases. So whenever you create a new database, right, based on these template databases, the database gets created. So if you have added some objects in your template 1, for example, you have created 5 tables in template 1. So whenever you create a new database, by default, those 5 tables will come inside that new database.
We should not touch like a post Temp0, Temp1 unnecessarily.
Yes, yes. So you should refrain from doing it. So temp 0 is a read only. You cannot touch anyways. Okay. But template 1 is something. For example, you have to create 10 databases which should have predefined objects. So then you create those objects in template 1. Then create those 10 objects using template 1. Then your work gets easier.
And you can have a n number of table spaces, whatever you want to
create n number of table spaces. There is no problem. But the problem is, if you create table spaces, you will have issues while you do backup recovery, because any user created table spaces is backed up separately. Okay.
Actually, table space concept has been depreciated. The way of searching to the application owners is not to use the table space, right?
Correct. So there is no reason why you need to create a table space, because how we use in Oracle, right? It is not like that in Postgres. You don't have a logical differentiation at the table space level. It's not like that. The table space is common for all the databases. So, you can create, but there is no point creating user table spaces in this. Because whenever I do a backup of the database, if I have created 2 table spaces, right, separately, I have created it. So those will be backed up outside my complete backup. So I need to, make sure that I edit them as well at the restore location, and place them in exactly the same place where from where where the directory structure should be same, and those things I have to take care of. So it is why it is not required. I would not suggest to create table spaces in Postgres.
So then, just out of curiosity, what is the purpose of table space in Postgres in that case?
Nothing.
There is no purpose. So they have given 2 table spaces that is default, where so one is your default, one is your global. So global is about your data dictionary, right? So any object that is there, it's a data dictionary object that resides in your global. Everything else comes in your PG default, that is like your user table space. That's it. There is no such concept where you need to increase your table space size, or if your data dictionary file system on which your installation is there, your PG data has space, right? There is no problem.
So there is a no data. Data files also exist on the table space.
Yeah. You don't have to add data file. If your PG data has 100 gig space, right? You don't have to worry. If the PG data has filled up, then you have a problem. You don't have to add space to table space and then it will go to database. Nothing like that. This is a file system based database.
How would you monitor in the
monitor what?
If table space is increasing, we have the data files alerts.
You don't have to monitor table space. Just monitor the PG data file system. How much space it is there.
Mount point.
How you monitor your own level, right?
So how do you if suppose your one mount point is full and you have another mount point, so how do we add that in the list? Can we use 2 different mount points?
No, you cannot.
Okay, we can use soft link, Ankit? We can use soft link and store the in different mount point.
So you can do that, but then your performance will get degraded.
Suppose you need to create a new table space in that new mount point. Suppose there is an alternative.
No, that you can do that. You can create a new table space on a mount point. That is fine. But what happens is that it has to go to that mount point, access, and come back. That is a major problem in Postgres. Your performance will take a big hit. Okay.
So if it is full, what? If it is full, what is the?
You do add space on PG data.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So
there is
while
a
doing architecture design, what you have to make sure is.
Sorry, it can
so
do
what
dynamically.
Go ahead.
It can do dynamically without any downtime, something like.
How you add space on a file system, right? Same way. You don't have to touch. You don't have to worry about your database.
So Ankit, what is the maximum size of a file system you have seen in Postgres?
I have seen 2 TB, 3 TB also. Okay, so that
because see, because in my environment in Oracle, I have one like the application. So there, like my daily growth is approximately 500 GB per day. Okay. So in that scenario, it will be very difficult, right?
Right. See, that's why I said in the first, if you there in the lecture from, it is still in the SMB phase. When I say SMB, small and medium business. Okay.
Oh, okay.
What
Yeah,
Oracle
I
takes
didn't
now,
relate.
right now. Yeah. So what Oracle market, it is not going there because Oracle market is your larger enterprises, right? You have 500 gig of data that is getting created every day. You definitely need space. Oracle also needs space there also, right? If you are using Oracle, you need space there also. At the end of the day,
Yeah,
you need
but
to
we
be
can use
whether you use
different
Oracle or
mount points.
right. Here you create one mount point. What is the problem? You put all the space in one mount point.
Yeah,
What is the problem?
got it, got it.
I think Postgres,
Yeah.
Postgres is supporting up to 16 terabyte of database size.
Okay,
I
is there
think
any,
so. Yes.
okay, the max is 16 terabyte. That's it.
I think so. I am not 100% sure. I never got a chance or a query to look at that. But yes, it might have that limitation as well. You never know. But 16 TB is again a huge amount.
So for the PostgreSQL.conf, we can see dynamically or something like that in Oracle. We need to create.
It's just a file. You can just open and see.
Okay.
It's a file you can open. You can make changes in the file itself. Once you make the changes in the file, you need to reload the Postgres this one service. Then it will take effect. You don't have to reboot your database also. You just reload your Postgres service.
Okay.
Or if you're making changes at the database level, you do the same thing. You make a change at the database level, come out of the database, reload your Postgres service, and again you go back to the database, you will see that it has changed. You don't have to bring your database down. That is not required.
So bringing the service down is exactly the same like we are bouncing the database, everything, right?
No. See, bringing
So
the
if I
database
restart my
down.
service,
See, at the hindsight, yes, you bring the service down, you are not able to connect to the database. That doesn't mean your database is not running, right?
okay,
I'm not
got
going
it.
and doing correct, right? I'm not going and doing stop database or those things. I'm not required to do that.
Yeah, the only thing would be when we restart service, till that time, nobody would be able to connect to the databases. That's it.
Right, exactly.
No, I just wanted to correct one thing. In this service, what will be happening? The service will be up and down. The database would be up and running, and application team would be using this database.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did not understand. I mean, so was it a question or how is?
No. I was telling, just making it clear for information only. For if we are making a change, the service will be restarted. Yeah.
Okay, so suppose I have an environment where the application is running 24/7 and I have to restart the service, okay? So if I restart the service, still my application will be able to connect to DBs?
Yes, it will be connected to the DBs. Right.
I don't think so.
If you have an existing right, and when you reload it, okay, your existing connection stays as it is. You don't get to connect. Your new connection will not happen if your services are reloading.
Yes, new connection will not happen. The sessions which are existing. Yes.
That will continue. Yes.
What you mean by reloading the service? Okay, you need to understand
If you
that.
reload the service, then existing connection will be up and running. Means connection will be working fine.
Whatever
and
is already connected to the database will stay like.
Right.
But the effect of the changes you will only see when you disconnect and connect again to the database. If you, so for example, my wall memory is 4 MB right now. Correct? I made it 16 MB. You are already connected to a database. I made it 16 MB and I reloaded, but you will still see 4 MB until unless you don't disconnect and connect back.
Yes, got it.
Got it?
Wall memory setting is at server side, right? So
no, I just gave an example. I mean,
okay.
that's just a setting. I mean, just to
And
make you
can you give an example? What is the difference between servers reboot and DB reboot? I think both are same, but you are telling in different context. Just wanted to understand.
There is no concept of DB reboot in Postgres. You don't do DB reboot. You only do service stop and start. Okay. Oracle, if you know Oracle, you go and database down in the database. Those things you do here, you don't have to worry about that. You just do a service stop, service start, like that.
In that case,
If
also we can say that Oracle only instance down, instance up. So it's not like maybe you are telling in that context.
Yes, you can do an analogies like if you in Oracle also if I bring my pmon down, right, everything comes down. If I kill the pmon, everything.
So if you
Yeah,
compare
I
with
think
Oracle,
it is more easier to compare with shutdown immediate versus shutdown normal, where shutdown immediate will kill all the existing connections, and then
See, both of them are doing at the database level, right? So you are not doing anything directly on the service.
I
Here
hope
you
simply
don't do anything on the
we can
database.
consider as restarting the listener.
Yes, you can do that. You can stop and start the listener. That is how you do it here.
So
Okay.
what is the difference between the Postmaster and the Postgres DB service in that case? Because Postmaster, same. Okay.
Right.
So they are
So
two
that's what
different processes, but they have the same
No.
characteristics.
In previous versions, they used to call it as Postmaster, and recent version they started calling as Postgres service process.
Oh, Postgres service. Okay.
But when I say reloading the service, that includes your Postmaster as well. Okay, so that is how your Postmaster only will do that. It will stop all these processes, these processes, the services, and then it will bring it up like that. Internally, that will happen.
So in that case, how can it retain the existing connections? That is where I'm
because
confused.
every connection has its own these processes. Every connection when you connect will have its own shared memory in these processes. So those will not be touched.
Can you refer to any
when you restart the service,
I told about reload. Okay, there is a difference between reload, stop, start, and restart. I hope you guys know that.
So there is similar like
about reload now.
OEM, right? Oracle manager, how we are doing a reload and start and stop, right?
Right. So if
It's
I
not
do a
like
stop, everything goes down. Nobody can connect. If
kind
I
of
do a stop,
agent-based services, right?
Let me tell you, reload is just like scope equal to memory, or scope equal to both without shutdown in an Oracle context.
Correct. So when you do changes in the PostgreSQL.conf, you just reload. You don't stop and start the service. You reload it. Okay. That is why connections, existing connection will still be there, and any new connections will see the changes. Okay. That is why if you make any changes in PostgreSQL.conf, you always reload it. You don't stop and start the service. That is not a good practice. Always reload.
but in that case, there are certain parameters only supporting the reloading because there are some dynamic parameters and there are some of the
those parameters. So those parameters which requires a reboot, then you have to stop and start. That is by default saying, right? It's not like every process will happen, but those which doesn't require, you don't simply do it, right?
Yeah, and when we restart the services, it means whatever the in-flight injections are there, they are being stopped and reconnected. It's like the application pools are there. The application pool connection will be re-established.
Right. If you are using application pools, yes. If you're using PG pool, if you are referring to that, PG bounds, yes. Okay. Great questions, guys. Anybody else have more questions? See, there are articles that have been written. Go ahead.
I'm asking, so how do we monitor this response time of a particular query or SQL, like we do in Oracle?
You have particular tables where you can exactly see how much time a query is taking after it was started. So those tables are there. You just query that table while your query is running, and it will tell you exactly how much time the query took.
So can we check historical also? So
Couldn't hear you.
or we can check historical also.
You can check historical also. Which is already ended, you can check that also. But you need to know the ID of that.
Okay.
Aditya has any questions?
Yeah, can you tell just in a high level what is the major difference between that Oracle and Postgres advantages? I mean, other than free resource, for the Postgres, what is the use? Basically they are going for Postgres. I mean, advantage on the.
Great. So see, the biggest advantage is it's free. Okay. So for example, I have a OLTP database where it's an online database. Everything is connecting, data is getting in the database, and you have another database which you only use for reporting. Correct. You are working into an environment where you generate monthly reports. So that database is, instead of having the database as an Oracle database and paying license, you can always opt for a Postgres database there, so that you can generate reports from Postgres database. You can do a replication from an Oracle to Postgres. Okay. Once the data is moved to Postgres, you can do your reporting from Postgres and save on the license cost. So that is the major advantage Postgres gives you in front of Oracle. Any transactional database can also be a Postgres database, but again, as I said, it can only support your small and medium businesses. As somebody said, 500 gig of data generation every day is very high for Postgres. You will see performance issues. Oracle is Oracle because it is very, very good on performance, where Postgres is still learning to get there. It will take some years for Postgres to be at the par with Oracle at the performance level. So any OLAP, when I say OLAP, analytical processing database, where you use it for reporting only, where no new data is coming in, use Postgres. Save license cost, save your support cost. But any high performance environment you need, you have to go for Oracle. If your client is okay to have little performance here and there, you always recommend them Postgres. This is the advantage and disadvantage of Postgres.
So when coming to replication between Oracle to Postgres, again there is no open source or freeware.
There is Ora 2 PG is there. It is open source free. Use Ora 2 PG to replicate from Oracle to Postgres.
Only it's one time, right? It's not CDC.
Yes, that is there. For CDC, you need to use Golden Gate if you have the license.
Again,
if
it's
not,
cost. So
yeah. So that's you need to. So again, you need to figure out. For example, if I have one transitional database and 5 OLAP databases, so it is always good to procure a Golden Gate license instead of 5 Oracle licenses, right? So you need to evaluate which is cost saving. Okay. CDC from Oracle to Postgres you cannot do. You will have to do Ora to PG. You can do that. You can always run Ora to PG on 30th of the month and generate reports. You can do that.
So for how big database have you gone through this kind of replication, like 1 terabyte, or how easy is this?
I have done replication from Oracle to Postgres up to 10 terabytes. I have done from Postgres to Oracle also.
Okay.
The replication is pretty smooth. It works very well through Golden Gate. I know Golden Gate, so I can talk about Golden Gate. So from using Golden Gate, you can do replication, CDC, your initial load, everything.
So Ankit, can you expand a little bit more on like how the enterprises actually convert from Oracle to Postgres in a situation where they have a lot of code that have developed in form of PL SQL and packages, functions, procedures, the real challenge.
Yes, I understand. So everything is convertible. If whatever code you have in your source, consider an Oracle database, everything that can be moved to Postgres. There is no problem. Functions, procedures, anything, and everything can be moved. Which cannot be moved you can write it in the Postgres database. Okay, it is very easy. So if you have a function or a procedure that is not working as is how it was working in Oracle, you can always write it down in Postgres. It is the same SQL, PL SQL it supports. So that those are very small problems. If you really want to save license, you can always find a way out to do that. Data at the end, if you have the data replicated, you have a mechanism to replicate data. Always go for Postgres as your reporting database. Yes, you will need to make sure your data replication is thorough. You are not missing any data.
So you should be more focused and worried on data rather than the code itself. Okay. So the compilation of the code. So the way you compile the code, the way you execute, you run packages, execute packages, all this is seamless. I mean, in the sense, with some effort, it is possible.
Yes, definitely possible.
Okay.
Yeah, Ankit, I have a question related to ADB.
Okay.
Yeah, so like how it is different from like Postgres and ADB Postgres. So what is the major difference between these? And how is the support?
ADB Postgres? ADB is
like
autonomous.
So like we do have in Postgres like the paid support that we get from Postgres, right?
Right. So good question. So there are two types of Postgres. Okay, one is your open source Postgres, one is EDB Postgres. I think you're talking about EDB Postgres, right?
Yeah, EDB Postgres.
Right. So EDB Postgres is nothing but EDB is a vendor which provides Postgres, so that's a certified Postgres provided by EDB. It's how you have Oracle, right? Same way EDB is a vendor. You can always use that, but you need to pay license cost to EDB. In turn, they will the Postgres database as well as they will provide you support. So it's the same way how it works in Oracle, right? You buy it from Oracle and they provide you support. So if you want support to manage your Postgres database, you need to contact EDB. They will provide you support, but yes, you need to pay license for that.
So the installation is like the different installation that we get in like installation remains the same. So the only difference would be in service.
I'll tell you the difference. Only difference is if you install an open source Postgres, the database that gets created is called Postgres. If you install EDB Postgres, the database that gets created is called EDB. That's it.
Okay.
Basically, they have a wrapper. They have a wrapper around the Postgres open source, and they just call it as their own product.
The thing is, they support. If you are in a problem, if you can't do it yourself, you can always have somebody where you can raise a ticket and they will help you out. So in open source,
so do you like have any info regarding how the licensing works there in EDB? Core based, right? And I think compared to Oracle, it would be quite cheaper.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
But if I have to purchase, I will go and purchase Oracle only. Why would I go and purchase EDB instead of either I use an open source Postgres, either I use an Oracle.
I heard like it's 10 times cheaper than the Oracle.
Yes, but you need to look at that. I don't think so because the certification cost is 10 times greater than Oracle. But again, though that's debatable. I have never compared them. It's a growing company, so yes, they are doing well. So I think they are doing good in the market.
They have basically just created views and tables just like Oracle. It's like DB underscore views, right? So they are just putting the wrapper on top of the community version of Postgres. So for those things only, they are it's like applying the licensing on top of the community version.
Only as I said, right? Only advantage you have is support. That's it.
Yeah.
There is no other drastic change in performance or nothing. It's the same database. Only advantage is support you get if you use it.
And how is their support? Like they like in the market, they generally provide support.
I've never worked with EDB, so I don't know how their support is. Okay, I'm very happy using Postgres open source.
On the maintenance
Yeah.
wise, we apply patches and everything.
Sorry, did not get that.
On the maintenance wise, we apply the patches and everything regularly.
Yes. In this also you will get periodic patches from the community. They will keep releasing the patches. It's up to you to upgrade it. Okay, so periodic patches will be available in both the cases, in open source as well as in your EDB.
Sure. For Aura to PG conversion migration, what type of objects you would require much attention? Have you seen any kind of this?
See, there are a couple of data types that are difficult. So if in Oracle, if you have any data type, right, that will not be important using Aura to PG. So that you have to do separately. But I think blob and blob are now covered.
Ankit, do you have any list of
objects like materialized views or any other objects?
So what I heard is about asking the list. I don't have any list, but you can definitely find that over web. It is very easy to find. But yeah, one I know is any data. Another is blob and blob were problems before, but now they are resolved. And any data is very, very rare. You will not find it in Oracle databases. Only ERP databases, I guess, those will have any data.
You says like rack is not support right here, so there is no availability kind of thing. Can't without
There is no node high availability. You can always have a high availability. Your own. There is a streaming replication that you can create. You can create a Postgres standby. You can always have a streaming application, but there is no node level concept where one node goes down. It is a DR setup.
Okay, usually we can have DR setup.
Yes, you can have a DR setup. You can have a standby Postgres. You can have a streaming replication going on, and you can use that.
So when you apply the patches, do you need downtime?
Yes, obviously yes.
Ankit, one question regarding the upgradation, or maybe we can say the patching. So in the PG upgrade tool is having two ways, that either you can copy the entire data directory, or maybe you can point, just like just create a DB link. Yeah. So does that impact in the performance? If it is, let's say I had Postgres 11 and now I'm having a Postgres 12 upgraded to a Postgres 12, but I made a link of the original data directory, which is in the data directory of 11. So does that impact in the terms of performance?
If both are on the same mount point, no. But if they are on different mount point, yes. Okay. So you need to make sure the mount points are same. Secondly, you need to make sure you maintain both the directories. If you are pointing, you cannot discard one directory. So I would never say do like that. Always do a clean upgrade where you can discard the previous version.
Okay.
Anything different about backups and restores, like incremental, differential, full, open?
Right.
Do you
So
have
there are
all of
two
these
types
in
of
Postgres?
backups in Postgres. Two types. One is logical, one is physical. Okay. You can always. So what happens is, if I explain about logical and physical, your logical, your data, you are just normal data, you are taking backup, and you are moving it. Physical, you are moving your files, your data files. So these are the only two type of backups that are available in Postgres, and they are enough. You don't need any more data backups because it's not needed. So if you are moving your if you are upgrading or if you are migrating your Postgres to a different box, you do a physical backup. If you are just creating a backup, you for your restore purposes or your production box, you do a logical backup.
So when you say logical backup, you mean something like export in Oracle?
Yes,
like you can
exactly.
just take table space, user, whatever.
Yes,
I mean a
yes,
database here.
Correct.
Right. So Ankit, is it possible if I have taken logical backup of one schema, like with the PG dump, and I want to restore single table in a Postgres?
You have taken backup of what?
like I have taken the logical backup, like I have taken the XPDP in the Oracle, like all the schema. Now I want to import only one table from that dump.
Yes. So,
I don't think
But
so
in
that is
Postgres,
possible.
yes, I also don't think. I never heard like I searched on the web, but I didn't find anything, and we can import one table from the schema.
You cannot do that. You have to import the entire schema and then delete whatever is not required.
Yeah, otherwise, copy the table from the new schema.
Yeah. Otherwise, just take the dump of the table.
Here also we can call same export import, like same kind of utility
No.
or something.
It's called
PG
PG
underscore
underscore dump.
PG underscore dump. Okay.
Yeah, it comes with the installation.
Okay. So can we create something like restore point, something same
Yes,
as
you
what?
can. Quarantine time recovery is there.
Okay.
So you can always use that.
And can we have an example of cloning a database like entire cluster or DB? How do you proceed?
Duplicate.
That is up to you. So, for example, if a cluster has 10 databases, so if you want to clone the all 10 databases, you can do it a cluster, all everything. But if you want only one database, then you just take the dump of one database and restore it.
And what about the objects? You said like roles and users are global. So how do you take this? How do you proceed in real time? Like I have general doubt about this one.
Okay, so you're talking about the users, right? So that you need to create.
There are two ways, like entire cluster duplication or only one database duplication. Entire cluster is just like a restore to another server. That is simple. But what about one particular database? Suppose you want to have schemas on database.
Schemas will be there inside database, but the users you need to create yourself.
Yes, users and roles. How do we distinguish particular database users alone? And so you take.
There is no particular database. That's what I said. So, for example, your A side has 10 users, right? And you are taking one database out of that and cloning it to your B side. So all these 10 users you will have to create in your B side because all those 10 users had access to that database.
Okay.
Okay.
So because that user has on a cluster level, not a DB level, right?
Correct. Exactly. That user creation is at the cluster level.
And what else apart from users I should copy to a B site?
The users and roles. That's it. Table space. If you have created external table space, you have to do that as well.
Okay. Users, roles, and table spaces. Okay.
Okay. Anything else, guys? We had a demo scheduled. I'm very sorry that it couldn't happen because of little technical glitches. I wanted to show, little administration how it works, but for some reason I'm not able to do that. Yeah.
Oh, what are the maintenance tasks we are performing in Postgres?
So Postgres, the major maintenance task is defragmentation. So you need to keep a note or keep a watch on your table's performance by looking at how much defragmentation is there in the table. Perform periodically defragment it by using vacuum. So that is a major maintenance task you do. Second, keep a watch on the file system space on which you have installed your Postgres. Make sure there is enough space available always. Third, your CPU and memory, because your Postmaster, these are processes that will take CPU memory, right? So you need to make sure that you have enough CPU and memory available on the OS box side so that it can perform properly. So these are the things that you need to always watch out for or do as part of maintenance checks you need to do.
Okay.
And Ankit, here in Postgres, like binary is on the different location, right? And data dictionary is on the different location.
You can always have it on the same location as well. There is no problem.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, no problem. Okay, great. If there are no other questions,
any administrative differences apart from Oracle you observe as an Oracle DBA and
yes, there are a lot of administrative differences. User roles and schemas is a big difference. Installation of databases is a big difference. It is very easy in Postgres. You need to take a lot of effort in Oracle to do that, right? Tablespace is completely removed as an administration in Postgres. You don't need to worry about that. Data file administration is not needed in Postgres. You don't have to worry about that. So those things are there. It is relatively very easy. I would definitely suggest all of you to learn this. Not necessarily learn from me if you don't want to. You can hire any other trainer later or whatever, learn yourself. But if you all are DBAs or are pursuing database, you should always have one open source database command. You should always have that in your resume. Okay.
Yeah, Ankit, one question.
Can you suggest some good books?
I have never referred books here. I always did practical. So web is there. I mean, so you have enough articles on the web. So if you want to, just type Postgres architecture, you will get 10 sites which will give you good details. So books, I can't help on that. Sorry.
Ankit, what about cloud companies offering the Postgres version?
Yes. So there are a lot of cloud which are offering Postgres as service. So AWS has Aurora PostgreSQL is there, right? Your Azure also has it, I guess. So yeah, PG as a service is coming up everywhere. So at the end of the day, it is the same thing. But yeah, they are also offering it now because Postgres is creating a lot of noise in the market. Pankaj was asking something. Pankaj,
can you use
yes.
the command for read-only mode of keeping one database or cluster?
Ankit,
I don't have it right now, Bala. I will have to look at that. Maybe I will look at it and maybe give it to these guys and they can pass it on to you.
Okay, thank you.
Ankit, one question related to performance tuning. I mean SQL tuning. Here, like in Oracle, we are able to see execution plan, explain plan, traces. So in Postgres, how we can see execution plan?
You can see execution plan. Everything you can see in Postgres also.
So we can see the wait kind of thing here.
We can see what?
Wait event, like in Oracle, see in the background we can see what's happening.
You can see in EDB. EDB has AWR concept. But in open source, you don't see that. You don't have that AWR concept, wait events. Those things are not there in open source.
No, Ankit, but we can see using some views right on from the database and wait events in the Postgres.
Yes, that you can see.
Yeah.
From the table, you can query the correct table. There is a table, as you said, where you will get those details. But there is a consolidated AWR that comes in EDB, which is similar to our Oracle AWR, which is not available in open source. That's what I was.
Ankit, I have one doubt. See, if you run when you run the experiment plan, it will run backend the same query, right? But we have a defect in Postgres to run experiment plan for any update, delete commands, right?
Why so?
I think you should run parallel. You should run it in one block to roll back the statement as well, right? When you're running the experiment plan.
That is for the rollback. So how does it related to explain? Okay.
No,
right.
If you run an experiment plan
yes. Because it's an auto commit. Postgres is an auto commit. So
how to disable this one auto commit?
No, that's what you have to run a rollback command backend with one block.
There is a option. You can auto commit or you can manual commit.
Yeah. What is that? Can somebody paste it or?
Yeah, we'll.
You will. Okay. Any insert update, it is auto commit. If you don't mention, if you just do an insert, you don't have to commit. It will auto commit.
There is in config file you can modify. You can see that point. Means
yes.
If you are enable to commit, then you
BTET.
remove has. Yeah.
So I just wanted to know how the real world DBA will work on this one, like BTET, or if suppose the user gives a script to run, you are not sure whether error occurs or not. Suppose if you want to roll back, how do you proceed?
Yeah, so you need to run it in begin and end. So you create a block, begin, run your update inside that. Okay, and until unless you don't commit, it will not. You have an option of rollback in that case. Okay, so you have to run in begin and end blocks.
That is one big wrong thing in Postgres.
Right. Great, guys. So I think we can close this now. Just again, showing you this. You can reach out to me LinkedIn if you want. If you any help, okay, you can connect with me. I would be happy to help you out in case of your endeavors. I have written, there are a couple of articles that has been written about data fragmentation. So Karthik, if you can post those links to these guys in the chat window for data fragmentation as well as for wall internals, I have written. You can go through those articles. It might be helpful for somebody who's trying to learn Postgres.
Yeah, can you post if possible now? If you have.
Yeah, so if Karthik is there, Karthik, are you there? Can you post those links? Yeah, so he has posted it. Okay, you can go through that. Okay, guys, thank you so much. Very informative session. Thank you for your questions. I hope I was able to answer them. So yeah, connect with me or.
Is it possible to have? It's like my question is to both Ankit and Vinod. Is it possible to arrange replication in-depth thing?
I did not get your question. Sorry.
See, replication. We have a data guard type, right? In Postgres, is it possible to have one session on the same?
We will try that. Okay, streaming replication. We can try that. Okay. Okay, guys. Thank you so much. Have a good
Thank you, Ankit.
Yeah, thanks, Ankit.